We are recording. And what do we have for time? Somebody got an accurate time?
5:12 p.m.
5:12.
Yeah.
Okay, we're opening the meeting for Airport Commission on March 6th. A little late, but we're here at the airport. The minutes for the February 7th meeting. Anybody get a chance to look at them, or you want to approve them, or do you want to look at them and then they're right here? Anybody want them? It's one page each. So I gotta take a bunch of them. Pass them out. Please, thank you. If, okay, do you want to approve those, or do you want to point out?
Yeah, I'll do it.
Approve, okay.
I'll second it.
Okay, whole business, and as usual, we'll get Gail Associates up first. Anything on the runway update?
Yes. So, as you noticed, construction's more or less complete. We still have some outstanding items, but on February 8th, we reached out to the FAA regarding the airport's information in FAA's Airport Data and Information Portal, or ADIP. Per FAA's latest policy changes, any changes to safety critical features, and in this case it's the runway width, requires an aeronautical survey of the as-built condition in order for FAA to change your 5010 basically. So the aeronautical survey is referred to in 18B for AC 150-5300 18B. And the cost is approximately $75,000 or $3,750 to the local share. That work has to be done as a standalone project, so it cannot be included in this grant. And the last sentence here, I received some information this afternoon that sort of nullifies that. But I do have some questions I'd like to discuss with you regarding that aeronautical survey.
Yep.
And Sam Smithies from FAA sent over those questions. So, project cost and funding. Gail, to obtain a cost of the 18B survey efforts, which we have, it's approximately $75,000. We need to discuss whether or not the available entitlements that the airport has accumulated will cover that, or if it needs to be AIG or BIL. But we can certainly discuss that more at the scoping meeting when that time comes, because
Yeah.
Colleen from the FAA will be there, and she'll have a breakdown of what the airport has available in funding.
Okay.
And then the City of Gardner and the Gardner Airport Commission are to confirm the availability of the local share for the survey effort. And then we would have to request a grant application extension because March 1st is the application deadline. So we're aware that this is sort of for all non-discretionary grants. So I will write up that request, send it to you, Jim, for your signature, and then you can forward it along to FAA. Following that, we would have to pull together a scoping meeting. But I think the first thing that the airport needs to do is determine whether or not that $37.50 is available for local share.
And we have to check in the front office.
And if it isn't there, we talked about putting aside a wildlife.
That's not the ideal scenario, because the wildlife, Jackie's already done a good portion of work associated with that job.
And we've all already paid for the independent fees.
That is correct.
Okay.
So, if you would like, we can meet with the city with you guys, or you can handle that on your own, up to you. But we use Blue Sky Geospatial out of North Adams, and they'll come out, they'll perform that survey, and then it takes probably a couple of months to process that information. It's all LiDAR measurements of the approaches. Then they have to put it into a format that the FAA requires in order to upload it. So there is some work on their end, but relatively no work for Dale. So
Yeah.
we would basically
The
apply
set
for the grant
format.
and close out the grant.
It's a set format for what they've got to do to
Right.
just change the
Yep.
information all the way around.
And I pointed out how ridiculously absurd it is that in order to change a 75 to a 60 on one form, you have to spend 75 grand. But it's the FAA.
Yeah.
Why was it changed from a 75 to a 60?
The FAA determined that based on the operations, the only width that Gardner was eligible for was 60 feet. So we could have maintained 75 feet, but it would have to be paid for at full cost.
So how did it come about that there's an extra 75, 65 grand to spend to get why wasn't that
That
come up with?
is a great question.
I
I've
know,
never had
who
to.
missed that one?
It would be the FAA at this point. I reached out to them to try to update that information. They submitted a request to the ADIV help desk, and that's what they came back with. I've never had to do that before, so it seems like this is sort of a new requirement on FAA's part.
Well, you better have that explanation ready for the mayor. I guess my question, it kind of goes along with that. The wildlife survey, or whatever you want to call it, is that a necessary thing that needs to be done too, or is that just something that?
It is part of the process for the 20-year plan. And it has to be, and since the 20-year plan, the previous one is going to be expiring in a couple of years, we're trying to get lined up so that we can put this one on the end of that one and keep going.
Makes sense, but does it have to be a part of the 20-year plan?
The FAA is the one who's
Requiring it, okay.
These are all requirements.
Start of it, yeah.
We're not spending anything, we're not setting the rules, we're just following, trying to.
But that hazard assessment would dictate whether or not you need to enclose the airport and perimeter fence. It would dictate whether or not there are mitigation efforts with future projects, because there's protected habitat of species on the airport, things like that.
My concern as a hangar owner is that at some point the new mayor is going to you know.
Well, this is something that has been done over the years before, so there's precedent all the way through. And I think that thinking about the budget, we have a meeting tomorrow that is gonna address some of that. So we're trying to figure that out now. But I think that it's part of the process, I guess is the best way I can put it. That's how I look at it. And you gotta start the process ahead of its due date, because it takes
Yeah,
years
right,
of planning. Everything goes, in business, if we're all quiet, do it, get it done.
yeah.
With FAA, you have to justify everything.
You have to
And,
justify.
you need a lot of the justification comes through these planning studies and, through the master plan and other planning studies that
And it is a
take
pain,
place.
but, and you can use this sort of as your ace up your sleeve with the mayor, is, it's hard to turn down 95% funding being provided for these things.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So the entitlements you were talking about, is that the 150,000?
Yeah, your non-primary entitlements, those are
Why
pretty,
can't we just use, well, that's probably not kosher, we use some of that for the local sheriff, we can't come up with it since this is
right, yeah,
one of the
there's
blocks
always,
added.
there's always a non-federal share, and those entitlements can't go towards it.
Okay, that's what I thought you were
There
gonna
was
say.
back in 2009 with the ARRA projects, with those older grant programs, you could leverage federal funds against other federal funds, but they did away with that.
Right.
All about the rules.
So, moving on, the electrical contractor, Cullen Electrical, has periodically returned to the site over the past month to install equipment as it's received. There is still some outstanding equipment. The meter, we got a ship by date of June 1st. So, we're gonna continue monitoring that, and we'll coordinate with you in real time
Right.
whenever Cullen needs to get.
They're good about, Andrew's good about catching up with me and just sending me an email for any notice if they get out the other runway or anything. No, that's working good.
So, in combination with the final electrical work, we still need to have the final site stabilization, and we need to address the runway markings reflectivity by remarking the runway. Additionally, to address the object-free area clearance issue, we propose to the FAA to relocate the perimeter fence further down the slope on the access road on the 1/8 end. And FAA did accept that. We have money within the grant to do that relocation, so that appears to be the best solution. And then the last item related to the runway is contact from Mr. Alan Becker was provided with a contractor on February 5th so that they coordinate an investigation of the septic system off the back of Mr. Beckner's hangar. If no communications between Rainmaker and Mr. Beckner have occurred, please let us know. We can request action from the contractor. So I'll note that as request made.
Yeah, so far I haven't heard from him, but
I think nobody knows what the weather's gonna do, but it's been very wet.
no, it's early. I'm not concerned about it, I'm just keeping
Yeah.
tabs on it, that's all.
Understood.
So what do you expect?
So, actions requested this month. It is none at this time, but there does need to be some coordination done on Isabel and
Right.
James End with the city to see if that local share is available. If not, let us know. We might be able to call in a favor with Mass DOT perhaps.
Okay.
How much is the share?
37.50.
Estimated 3,700. And that's it for my update. I'll probably follow with you guys before the end of the week.
I'm gonna be out of town most of tomorrow, but I'll be back Friday.
faster
Well-
tomorrow.
You said you had a budget meeting tomorrow?
No, no, I've got a funeral tomorrow. I'm going to a funeral tomorrow.
Oh.
And there is a budget meeting tomorrow that she's gonna be at.
Okay.
And,
I am.
yeah, in the morning, that's the public welfare committee. They're the ones who decide what we get
I see.
and the budget.
Okay, all right, I'll talk with the mayor after that and I'll text
Yeah,
you.
this is a good place to start with council.
And if you need any supplemental information from us, just give us a call. Any questions on the runway?
How come we have to move the fence?
So the object-free area for the runway actually goes to about the midpoint of the access road. The fence is not fixed by function, so it doesn't need to be within the LFA. For the FAA regs, as long as the top of that fence is below the nearest point on the runway safety area, it's considered a clear LFA. So we just have to take that fence and slide it down the embankment a little bit so the top is below the safety area.
That works.
And so there's that. Oh, one other recommendation, as we move forward with the conditioning flight inspection on the wheels, we only get one shot at this. If it doesn't pass the conditioning flight inspection the first time, we have to pay again to have them come back and do it. So as a precautionary measure, I'd like to at some point get out there perhaps with you, Jim. I'll bring my chainsaw down, and if there's any vegetation in front of those wheels, we can just knock them.
Well, that's what, yeah, we have to be, down at the south end, I've been knocking down all the stuff that I've got. I got probably, I don't know, maybe another couple hours to get it down, and I'm trying to get it out of there now. That was in the way. The other side, I'm not so sure. That was part of the project down there, and we have to be careful with that because that's wetlands. This one I think is, I don't know.
How about,
But we gotta determine that, yeah, before
so
we.
the next meeting will be April. It'll be hopefully warm enough where I won't mind being outside. I'll come down early, and we can sort of have the
Sure.
afternoon, we'll go take a look and do what needs to get done.
I've got to, Kenny had a thing that he used to have with his phone that would do all the angles.
I did that before the project, and I took photos. It doesn't look like there's anything on the approach surface, but those rails are sitting.
They're angled out
Yeah,
at about,
Mass DOT came out and did it too.
Yeah,
and they're angled out at about
15
a,
degrees.
15 degrees, I think it is.
Yeah,
It's wicked
15
sharp.
out and 10 up.
Yeah. And that
So-
really encroaches on a lot of stuff, especially even down on the other end, on the right, west side.
Yeah.
So,
Have you, they're not energized yet, correct?
I don't know. I think they
If
are,
they
but
are turning on with the runway lights,
I don't think so.
okay, those should be no-tan closed and turned off until they're commissioned. But if,
I think that's some of the stuff we're waiting for,
right,
because they're not wired into the thing, but I don't know.
so if you have the opportunity to fly in and do some approaches,
See if they're on.
well, turn them on and see if you can see them the entire approach. That way we'll know what the FAA will see when they do the flight inspection.
Yeah.
But it would have to be only for you and turn it back off afterwards for whoever the pilot wants to do it with it.
It would be, it's just knowing the parameters and trying to get fixed positions on the ground and be at certain altitudes is little works that go into that.
Yeah, but if you're
But if you
flying,
just
if
see
you're flying
A normal
the glide
pattern.
path, a normal pattern, you should be able to see them the whole time.
Yeah.
If there's vegetation in the way, it should probably be addressed before the FAA
Yeah.
comes out.
Well, they have deflectors or shields on to keep them from, they're like louvers, and they keep them from mostly bothering the neighbors.
Right.
Is what I think, and on the north end, it's the only place we got a problem with that, maybe, but they're only on during an approach and landing.
Right.
Or a takeoff, anytime the runway lights are on.
So let's just keep that in mind.
Yep.
Once we coordinate that flight inspection, it's usually, they fly to the important ILS, commercial service airports, and if they can swing through an airport like Gardner on the way, then they do that. So it may be a couple of weeks, a month, 2 months before
Yeah.
they can actually swing through.
Oh, I
So
understand, yeah.
I'll do the coordination as soon as possible, and then hopefully they can give us a date before which we can check the wheels, cut
Yeah.
the vegetation, whatever we have to do.
Okay,
All right, awesome. And that's it for me. On to the fun stuff.
Oh my goodness, I'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible tonight, but I do have some questions for all of you. So the master plan project, last meeting, I let everyone know that FAA provided their comments on chapters 1 through 4 on February 6th. And then Mass DOT provided comments late afternoon, actually, as I was on my way to the meeting last month. The email came through with Mass DOT's comments. So Gail has made all revisions to the first 3 chapters of the master plan. And we're working to finalize the forecast chapter. FAA had some questions. Isabella's been extremely helpful getting information and data that I've requested, among everything else that she does, so thank you so much for that. The one item that came up was with respect to the airport's critical aircraft. In previous years and part of previous studies, even as part of the runway reconstruction project, it was listed, the critical aircraft was listed as a B1 small category aircraft. And basically the justification that I provided to FAA was there's really no evidence that I can see to deviate from that at this time, given that the runway was constructed to those standards and whatnot. Well, FAA came back and the quote is right here. If the Piper Twin is the most demanding aircraft with regular use, then an A1 small, basically designation at the airport is appropriate. If there's another more demanding aircraft regularly utilizing the runway, it should be identified here. So basically my question for the commission tonight is, are there larger aircraft, heavier, it's really the faster speed aircrafts that would make regular use of the airport? I know all of the based aircraft are A1 category aircraft, and based on what I can see through the FAA, they have a traffic management system, counting system that they use, and they're really, the threshold that they look for is 500 operations per year. So it's basically something that comes in almost every day.
because we have caravans up at the north end occasionally, but they're not.
Yeah, I was gonna mention
Yeah.
that, but they're
Yeah.
singles,
That's-
they're single engine.
That's a single engine, but it's
They're
bigger
not
than
twins.
most of those.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger than those light twins.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, is there an estimate for, and unfortunately, I don't know the category of every aircraft
No,
at
I
the
don't
top,
either.
of the top of my head, but do you think that those come in and out every day? I mean,
No.
yeah,
It's nowhere near the volume that they would look at. Let's put it that way.
So just to, I guess, ease everybody's mind when we're talking about this designation, in the FAA's advisory circular for airfield design, the runway design standards for an A1 small and a B1 small, it's the exact same. It's the
Right.
same chart, it's the same separation standards, it's all the same basic information. So I know, the thought is, going from a B1 small to an A1 small, it seems like a reduction in the category of aircraft, but the same standards really truly do apply as far as airfield design is concerned. So, I mean, again, based on what I'm seeing, it seems like the airport is this A1 category. I, put it to the FAA kind of to, let them make the determination of what they thought, and they did end up coming back, like I said, with that comment I had said in the forecast. let's leave it as is, there's not, there's not extreme evidence one way or the other to support, given that there's no counting system really, that's showing what type of aircraft are coming in and out here, really other than traffic, the traffic management system, and that doesn't capture very much at all.
No, it doesn't.
And so it's just very difficult to tell, what is actually going on, but knowing that the based aircraft is the A1 and, are all the A1 category.
How difficult it is, I got a couple of quick questions just on it. How
Sure.
difficult it is to change if something changes?
Oh, something changes. So a lot of times, and Nick, you can correct me if I'm off base here, but a lot of times when you go to design any sort of facility, they'll ask for the design, the critical aircraft at that time. And there has been a change. I'm sure that some sort of justification at the time of the project can be provided. It's just for the purposes of the master plan, and when we're going through and we're updating the layout plan and we're, making recommendations for the sizes of facilities and the dimensions and safety areas and things like that, we need something to go by today.
Right.
But if all of a sudden you have, a B category aircraft that bases here and is making regular operations in and out of the airport, that would be something information you could provide to the FAA in advance of a project and, design to that.
And let's say, now that the runway's open, you start seeing more operations from a larger category aircraft. You can coordinate that ahead of time with the FAA. Like say you got, a PC-12 comes in and your operations are getting into the 350, 400 range. You can start that coordination ahead of the 500 threshold and say, we anticipate based on the forecasted growth rate, we'll be there on this year, and then you can start planning for that.
Yeah, because that, and I was wondering, where do helicopters fall in that?
They don't, no.
Because we got a whole new category of helicopters coming out of basically, that sort of stuff. And
What determines A or B? Is it the gross weight of the aircraft?
It's the approach speed of the aircraft.
combination, but there are jets out there that can make it in here and out of here without any problem.
Right, and so just I guess to also ease everyone's mind, just because the design, the critical aircraft for the airport is determined at this time to be an A1 small, that doesn't preclude other aircraft from landing on this runway and showing up here. It just means that, FAA is only going to invest federal funding into an airport to, increase the sizes of facilities or construct something to a size of aircraft that's actually utilizing the airport now. They don't subscribe to if you build it, they will come. And so, you have to show that this is what's, coming into the airport now, and any facilities that are being built will be designed around that. And again, like I said before, the A1 designation, or the A1 small designation versus the B1 small designation, it is the same, it's the same chart in the advisory circular, they're the same dimensions. It realistically, as far as the runway environment is concerned, it is not going to change anything.
So we're B1 now and we're moving to A1, is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah. And again, I wanted to really put it to the FAA to, kind of make that call and provide that input, because, if there wasn't a reason to change from the B1 small, I didn't want to, be making that change with, Yeah. So, anyway, I figured that was just a conversation worth having, because that will, likely be an update in the forecast chapter. What I'll do is once I get all the final information together for that forecast, I will probably, maybe Jim, you and I and Isabel can have like a virtual meeting or something, just talk about the changes before we submit it on to the FAA. I don't think we need a vote for that or anything like that. I think, you know, it's just really addressing their comments, but we can get that revised and then get a copy back up onto the airport's website so that anyone who wants to view that can do so.
Now, I have a question, so, you know, we're open, but not everybody knows that we're down to 60 feet. That seems like a safety problem. If somebody large is coming in,
Yeah,
So,
until
no
the
tan?
5010 is updated. I would
No tan.
maintain a no tan.
yeah,
If everyone's okay with moving on
Yeah.
from the critical aircraft discussion, I know it's a kind of a lengthy discussion tonight, so. So, you know, on to page 3 of the update here. So as we move on to subsequent chapters of the master plan, we'll start reviewing for, you know, project alternatives for various airfield facilities. I've gone through, the next chapter we'll be reviewing together will be chapter 5, which is facility requirements. And in the facility requirements chapter, what I will do is, and what I've already done for most of the facilities on the airfield, you basically take a look at all the facilities and you do a comparison against the condition of the facilities, any sort of non-compliant situations that are going on around the airfield, anything that might be a capacity issue. For example, I know that, you know, hangars are always seem to be at capacity, and it always seems to be a need at every single airport that we work with. So for example, that would be something that would be a capacity issue that you'd want to document in facility requirements chapter, which is what we probably have the chapter, to be honest with you, about 85% done at this point. We just really need the FAA's seal of approval on that forecast before we can finalize a few of those items and get the chapter out to everybody. So tonight what I'm hoping to do, and you all have a supplement little packet that I've provided, I have some questions for all of you that I'm hoping to go over, and I'll try to keep it as quick as possible.
okay.
You know, so basically, I guess up front, it's just important to recognize that the master plan is a 20-year plan. So we're looking, you know, far out into the future and identifying any potential needs that could come online or that are known today or anticipated to occur over that time frame. Just because we're identifying a project in facility requirements as a need, just because we evaluate an alternative or the commission makes a decision about a project alternative that ultimately ends up on the airport layout plan, that is not committing the city, that is not committing Mass DOT or FAA to funding the project. The purpose of this exercise is just to justify it. It's just to say, this is a need at the airport, here's why, here are the advisory circulars or the evidence that supports showing that this airport has a need, and then subsequently you would be eligible in certain cases, certain projects, for federal funding. So this is a justification process, but just because you say, yes, we have this need, this is a capacity issue, or this is a non-compliant, you know, situation that we need to address, we're not committing any funding by putting something into this plan. So just to ease everybody's mind. Once we get into later chapters, chapter 7 is the schedule of improvements. The commission will really be able to make some decisions and define the priorities based on short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. So short-term goals over the next 5 years, long-term goals between 6 and 10 years, and then, mid-term goals between 6 and 10 years, and then long-term goals, you know, 11 to 20 years out. So we'll do all of that as part of a later chapter once we identify the needs.
Okay.
I'll try to go through these bullet points really quickly.
Yep.
Runway and taxiway conditions, the environment is new, so everything is in good shape there. The runway object free area, as Nick alluded to earlier, that compliance issue, fortunately, we had received that guidance from the FAA that the fence can just be moved down the slope of that embankment, so that should take place this, you know, probably before the master plan is complete, but I just wanted to at least document it here as we're having these discussions. Runway approaches, so as it stands today, the airport has visual approaches. I know that it has been mentioned that, you know, the commission might have an interest in potentially upgrading those approaches at some point in time.
Yes, definitely, because we're at 955 feet, it's frequently foggy in the morning, and we have many instrument-rated pilots who are tenants who are asking for these approaches.
Understood. One thing I would just like to, I guess, you know, bring back kind of a full circle is, I know during the scoping meeting for the master plan project, we decided that we would try to keep the budget as low as possible for this project. And so one of the items that we can include as part of larger studies that have a little bit bigger of a budget are aerial surveys of obstructions in the runway approaches. Unfortunately, that was not included as part of this project, so right now, we're using information from previous master plans. I know that the approaches have been cleared as part of the runway project.
Right.
But point being is, we don't have aerial survey data to really analyze where are these obstructions in relation to a new improved approach. What we can do as part of the alternatives analysis is show where these new approaches dimensionally would lie in relationship to the runway, and then show you know, things like where private property boundaries are under the approaches, that if there were obstructions that were identified as part of a future obstruction study, you may need, you know, in order to clear trees to get that clear approach, you may need to pursue what's called an aviation easement, which is an airspace easement to clear the trees. So we won't be able to identify specific areas where the trees are located, but we can certainly, like I said, show the dimensions of those approach surfaces, show you where any property lines are, and kind of give you a sense of, okay, how many properties could we potentially be looking at, you know, impacting by, you know, going down the road of improving these approaches.
Okay.
And the 18B that we're doing for the runway width will capture both
A lot of
approaches. Yeah, so you'll know where the obstructions are after that survey.
Yeah, well, I mean, the geography doesn't really change that much
Right.
over hundreds of years. So, but I think the other thing too is we need to be able to sit down and look at an airport diagram of all the property.
Yep.
And then decide anything gotta be reserved for open space. Or
Yep.
anything. I'd hate to put up a hangar and have to tear it down in 5 years to put a runway through, or expand something, or do something that's.
So that'll all come a little bit later on. You
But
know.
I think, to me, that's what's feasible, what's not.
Understood, but the purpose of chapter 5 is to say, where are the issues? So what we need to do before we can start saying, okay, let's move on to where things go, we do need to identify where are these issues, what are they, and what can we do to improve them. And then when we get into chapter 6, that's where we start looking at alternatives and where do things go, what makes sense based on all the information that we have. So, and I do have items on the last page that are potential alternatives that we're thinking about based on the discussions that we've had. But if we can just move through these other items, I know it's very lengthy, so I apologize. The hazard beacons. One question that the FAA had about the hazard beacons is, how long have they been out of service?
One has been out for a year, a little over a year. I know that that was number 2 in the middle. I think the one up on Cottage Lane has been out for 4 or 5 years, I think, or something like that. And then the one over at Kozlowski's property, you know which church you want to call it, has been out for 10 plus years.
Okay, that's
The
helpful.
south one's been out the longest, the middle one has been the shortest,
Mhm.
and the north one has been 4 or 5 years, I would say.
Okay. Okay, so what FAA is asking, in order to determine if removal of these beacons might be necessary, is they're asking for an airspace case to be filed on each one. And so they can get an official determination on, you know, again, whether those beacons should just be removed altogether. So with, you know, the commission's blessing, you know, would you want us to move forward with filing a case for each one of those hazard beacon towers to get that information from the FAA, and then once they determine if they do need to be removed, then, you know, we can start talking about, you know, eligibility for FAA funds and things like that. But really we need that preliminary information, you know, through the OEAAA system.
I know they've asked for where they are, elevations and distance from the runway.
Yeah.
I don't know, is that surveying that they're gonna do, gonna cover that too, sort of?
It'll cover all of your protected services, so in theory, yes, those beacons would be a part of it.
They'll be identified. I think there's probably something around here that
So
says
we should
their
have,
elevation.
we should have the as-bills that show the elevation,
Yeah.
so it wouldn't be too much of a
Yeah.
work to get that information.
I think the first, the north and the middle one probably won't take too much to get going, I don't think. But the south one is probably not gonna happen. Because if we have to pay for it, it's gonna be big.
Well,
And lessons.
if you're okay with it, that we can move forward with filing the cases on each one to, you know, let FAA make the decision of
Well,
do these things need
there's-
to stay up or not?
Yeah, that's one question, and then the other question is how much it is to fix it.
Sure, sure. If they need to be fixed or if they need to be removed. But I think step one really is, what does the FAA want the airport to do with these things?
Right.
You know, so if everyone's comfortable with that, I'll.
I think that's a good idea.
Okay, so yeah, I'll do that, and I don't need a vote for that, I think that's fine.
Is there property nearby that is there,
They're all on private property.
are there buildings nearby that if the one that's 10 to 15 years out, is
Yes.
it possible that it would hit somebody's house if it fell down, or
No.
is it far enough away from?
Oh, that's far enough, they're all far enough away so that, I think the one on Cottage Lane might be the closest one to a building. Right. But I don't know if it would ever fall on it. That, I don't think there's any question, it's just,
So I'm just gonna try to keep moving along. PAPIs, precision approach path indicators. Airport doesn't currently have PAPIs. According to the advisory circular, the, you know, visual or non-precision runways, the, you know, 2-box PAPI system is considered suitable. So I don't know if that's something that we would want to identify in the facility requirements as a need at the airport. It's just a simple statement that that's something that the airport would wish to pursue. And again, not committing any funding or anything, it's just saying, here's a
I
need,
think
and here's
I
what it
think
is.
several of the people have asked about that.
It's vertical guidance, I think it's important.
Absolutely.
Okay, then I will put a big yes next to that one. Weather observing system. I know airport doesn't have weather observing system. Are there, Any experience of disruptions or challenges due to the lack of on-site weather observation?
We have to look at Fitchburg and other places, and there's frequently fog here because we're at the top of the hill.
The biggest
So,
problem,
that would be nice.
the biggest problem is we're 500 feet higher than the nearest
Yeah.
one. I use Worcester or Jaffrey as the more likely to have the weather we've got, because they're the same altitude, whereas Orange and Fitchburg are 500 feet lower.
That would be really helpful to have that.
But I know that's quite expensive too.
There are also, you know, as an alternative to an AWAS, there are weather observing cameras that airports in Alaska and out west, and actually I think they've started installing some in Maine. They've had some pretty good success. And there's, you know, an online portal that a pilot can log into and view real-time photographs of what the, you know, runway condition looks like. So really all I'd be looking to do as part of the facility requirements chapter would be just say, you know, here are the issues that the airport experiences due to the lack of on-site weather observation, and it's something that they, you know, they feel would be helpful for safety in the future, and then, you know, make a recommendation to consider on-site, you know, weather observing, and then we can talk, you know, a little bit
Yeah, well,
more.
we're at 91, we don't need, we can take off from 0, but it's, if something happens, you gotta plan on it. And usually, you like to see 400 or 500 feet if you're taking off on instruments. So you got a little time to think about what's gonna happen. But I know most of the guys coming in can't get down below the 800 a lot of the time. And if that could come down a little bit, that would be nice. But the GPS approaches have to be, would be the only way to do it.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think they, like they were talking about visual approaches, all of the visual approaches, once you get down at 800 feet.
Yeah. Okay, so I will add that into the chapter. Taxiways, taxi lanes, taxiway pavement associated with the runway reconstruction, new condition. Other pavements are really in varying conditions, some, you know, middle of the road, some better than others. Really the recommendation in this chapter would just be to reconstruct, you know, these pavements as funding permits. So really no question there, just kind of letting everybody know where we're at with that. The apron capacity, that'll be addressed after the forecast is approved by the FAA. It'll let you know how many aircraft are expected during the peak hour, and you know what you can expect to need for tie downs in the future, so that's still TBD at this point. And then I know that, you know, a lot of the pavements are older and need to be reconstructed. They would have to be reconstructed to new design standards, which may mean a loss of some tie-down spaces just because the separation, you know, isn't current. And so if it appears that there would be a loss of tie-down spaces due to the reconfiguration, it may be necessary to consider as a project alternative, you know, where additional tie-down spaces could go if there seems like there would be a shortfall due to that. But that's, again, a lot of this stuff is to be determined, but that might be a project alternative that we would look at later if it seemed like there would be a capacity issue there.
I'd love to have it.
Hangars. I know it's always a need. That hangars are full, to my understanding. Do you have a waiting list for hangars?
No, and I get maybe one call a month maybe, and the reason is because we don't have any turnover.
Yeah.
We really don't have much movement there.
Yeah.
People stay, they come and they stay.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, I mean, how quickly did it take you to fill the T hangar over there? I mean, they must have been full before before they were built.
I think there was a list, short list of people, but I don't know exactly how that was handled.
Yeah, that was before
my
my time.
Okay, so what we can do, and again, it would be, you know, in facility requirements, we're just identifying that there's a need for hangars, and then as we get into the project alternatives, we would start saying, well, okay, there's a need, but where do they go? So that, I know, snow removal equipment building, don't currently have one. I know, in previous discussions, it seems like that was a relatively high priority
I would
project.
say very high.
And is that still true?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're parking in a T hangar,
Yeah.
and it's really tight.
Mhm.
And, there's no room to put any equipment or oil filters or tires, they have to be placed somewhere else. It's just, it's not really.
Probably been waiting over 30 years for that.
I was gonna say, it's been on the plan forever.
The funding priority ranking for an SRE building is somewhere in the high 20s, low 30s, so the project would likely take discretionary funds. So at a priority ranking below, say, 60, you're gonna have to wait for all of the other higher priority projects to get funded, and then that trickle down to you. If there's any money left at all, would be when you'd be considered, but, I mean, with 22 billion in need and 3.5 billion every year, it's hard.
Can we buy a brick?
So, I mean, we should at least identify the need and then figure out where, you know, where's the best place to site something like this.
Well, that's one of the questions, that's why I say
Yep.
citing all this stuff and
Yep.
how we can expand. I mean, I think I can see 3 or 4 places where we could build as many hangars as we could get.
Sure, yeah, and again, once we get into actually
Yeah.
evaluating those alternatives, and we consider it as a holistic plan, so if we're putting hangars here, obviously can't put an SRE building there, and, you know, considering all those things, if,
Right.
you know, any other facilities need to be expanded or whatnot, that's all, you know, it all goes onto one large plan, and everything, you know, needs to be dovetailed together and seamless, and, you know, we definitely consider all of that. Fuel facility, 100 low lead system seems to be adequate at this
I
point.
did have one guy call, from somewhere like Florida saying, is your Jet A, available? And I said, sorry, we don't have Jet A, but,
Okay,
that was a request for it, and if we had it, they would have come in, but we did not.
okay, I mean, we can,
I don't think there's any, we've got to see what the alternative's gonna be.
yeah,
That's coming up in
Not
5
really
years.
a need right now, but,
yeah, I mean,
System's been working great though.
okay, so but the 100 low lead seems fine, I mean,
Yeah.
that's something, if there was a demand for it, if it's something you thought might be a need in the next 20 years, we may want to consider locations for where that could potentially go once we get to the alternatives, but if you don't genuinely feel that it's a need, you know,
Unless they make a lot of diesel airplanes, it ain't gonna be much of a need. But I think a similar system that's to what we've got for the Jet, for the 100, would be the same thing that we would use for Jet A. Basically, it would be the same type of a system, because it's above ground and
we
probably
put
side
it right next to the other one,
yeah,
but, yeah.
okay. But it's not high demand to this point.
No.
Not yet.
Okay. Administration building, I know that, you know, there's been, as you can see, incredible improvements here. Would the commission want to at least identify in facility requirements and look at potential options for an administration building, a combination snow removal equipment
Yes.
with an administrative space, that sort of, again, I understand that funding is an issue, but this is the opportunity where, you know, you can justify it through this process. And if there were funding opportunities in the future that came up, the airport would have the snow removal / administration building on the airport layout plan. It would be justified through the master plan project, and if there was that funding available, it'd be a lot easier, you know, than having to go back and justify that at that
And it would be years down the road anyway, so.
Is it, does it rank higher than the SRE building?
The, unfortunately, administrative buildings, don't qualify for,
Federal funds.
for federal funds. Yeah, unfortunately, and it's,
It'll
I
never
know,
happen.
I know,
It'll never happen then.
well, I know that, you know, and I know that Mass DOT had that big initiative, you know, probably about 10 years ago at this point, where they were constructing administration buildings for GA airports. I think that program, I don't think it's still ongoing, but I mean,
I don't think it is either.
Yeah.
We had talked about an SRE building with a portion of it as an administrative in the past.
yeah. So I think that's something that, you know, I think it would be worthwhile to carry forward at least, because
Yep.
there is a need. I mean, this is the opportunity to make sure
Yeah.
that we're documenting that that is a need. Vehicle parking, any issues with capacity for the vehicle parking?
You're
It's
talking about
cars
cars?
out here.
Yes, I'd like to talk about that. So, our electricity bill, has gone up, and I was wondering, you know how is there funding for solar panels? Could we have like a parking area with a roof and then solar panels on top like they do at the hospital?
That doesn't work.
Huh?
Not working at the hospital.
Oh, it's not working?
Never worked.
Never worked.
It's just the roof.
It doesn't work?
Never been connected.
Never had that.
Oh, well, that's too bad, because other hospitals and golf courses have it. Huh, okay, never mind.
We can, I can look into, I know that, are there any initiatives that are coming to mind to, EV charging stations?
They keep calling me, yeah.
We're not,
I mean,
Part of
that is
national
a potential revenue source for the airport. If, say, they wanted to put, you know, a 5-megawatt facility out in the field back here. I know that field is used, but they would pay you a monthly fee for per megawatt generated.
Okay.
I think.
For solar panels?
Yeah.
Yeah, but-
Pittsburgh has a pretty big system going up, and they're negotiating, it's something in the order of like an extra $100 grand a year for them.
but they're,
Turner's Falls is,
Do we have three-phase power down there? You need three-phase for solar.
That's a good, I'd have to check the plans.
yeah, you need at least three phase to have a viable
I'm
solar
really
system.
surprised if that doesn't interfere with
But
the,
the problem would be with radio frequency interference, but also where Templeton Light, and you have to get approval from Templeton Light for any funds or anything that goes through that. I'm going through it now with Ashburnham, because I get my power from Ashburnham and I put in heat pumps.
Yeah, you can't have solar power panels in Ashburnham.
Correct. And
It would be nice to add that to the list if we could get some.
what about reflection?
no, they don't
If you-
reflect.
If you are going to put in a solar array, you have to do a solar glare analysis before you can get operations and stuff.
You look at, go up to, have you been up to Sanford?
Yep.
They're the largest solar collection in the state of Maine,
It's
I
amazing.
think,
Second
or the
largest in the
Northeast,
country.
the second largest in the country. But they're all in the infields, and they're all over the place, but they don't reflect. For the most part,
So,
they
do you
don't.
think there's funding for something like that?
well, typically, I
Something we
think,
could get revenue.
well, typically what the, you know, what you would do as part of the master plan is you would designate areas of the airfield for compatible non-aeronautical uses. And you have to show that there's not that basically there's no aviation need that could be occupied by that area. And that's what we, that's what we would have to show as part of the study. And I do have an item for that a little bit later on in this little packet that I gave. But you'd identify it for non-aviation use, and then really the solar company would come out and do an assessment of of the area, and if it was feasible for them, then they would they could provide a quote. But I know a lot of airports are doing it, but we could certainly, again, if there are areas of the airfield that we could consider for designating for non-aeronautical use. That opens up the possibility for all sorts of revenue generating opportunities.
It's been shut down once here already.
Just something to think about.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's worth exploring. And again, and I'll get into this a little bit later on, but when we get into the project alternatives, there's always an alternative for no action. So, the commission, if we get through the analysis and it seems like this is not the road that the commission would like to go down, you could, generally commissions don't, but you could choose the no action if it seems like, you don't want to designate the area, or it seems like there's an aeronautical need in that area. But it's worth exploring. We're doing this, we might as well look at it. So let's see, I'll just try to go quickly through here. Snow removal equipment, we've already documented snow removal and mowing equipment. We documented the conditions. The recommendation for those things is always just basically keep them maintained and program for replacement when it's necessary. So that's really it. So let's see, perimeter fence, the existing fencing, to my understanding, is in good condition based on facility inventory. There is not currently full perimeter fencing, which is certainly wildlife hazard and security concern. If the results of the wildlife hazard assessment show that there is a safety issue, then one of the recommendations may be full perimeter fencing at the airport. So that could be an alternative that we evaluate for the airport. Are there items the commission would like to see explored? Is there a facility that I have not mentioned that I should be evaluating as part of facility requirements? I don't think I missed anything, but.
Well, I think there's everything pretty much.
Yeah, and there'll also, this is a preliminary discussion. There'll be a full review of the complete chapter once we get to that point, but again, until we have the green light from the FAA, we can't formally go through that chapter just yet. Project alternatives, I will keep this super, super brief. I would strongly recommend that a meeting be held between FAA, Mass DOT, and representation from the airport. So Jim, Isabel, maybe another commissioner if someone's interested in attending. When we start developing project alternatives, to get input from the agencies, because they'll provide a lot of good insight with respect to separation standards, and it makes it more of a team activity rather than us coming to a consensus here, sending it off to Mass DOT and FAA, and then having a bunch of comments that we have to go back to the drawing board. It just saves it just saves time in that way. So I would recommend that. Some items that I would recommend maybe evaluating as part of the alternatives would be, like I said before, the runway approaches. Again, really just the dimensions and looking at how many properties are located under, under those approaches. Hangars. snow removal equipment building / administration building, combination of the two. Perimeter fence, if the wildlife hazard site visit, comes to the determination that that might be necessary. Non-aeronautical land use would be another thing that we could take a look at. And then, if there are any other projects that the commission would like to explore, I don't need those answers today, but just kind of start thinking about those things and what, and really what we're looking at is anything that is like an expansion of a facility or an added facility, we'd need to evaluate project alternatives. If it is a maintenance item, a rehabilitation project of something that already exists, we don't need to evaluate it through the alternatives. All we need to do is identify it in the facility requirements, and then, you don't really need to do an additional evaluation of, where does this go, because it's already there. So really, any new facilities, anything that the airport would like to explore, evaluate, we can, add into that chapter. I know that was lengthy. Thank you for your patience. Any questions on the master plan before I stop blabbering on? No? Okay, seeing none. The last item I had on Gail's agenda on page 4, the wildlife hazard site visit. So just the update, the mayor's office did approve the record of negotiations and the grant application for the project, so that documentation has been submitted to the FAA. So that, as we discussed last meeting, waited for the green light from the mayor's office, we received that, and then submitted that documentation. Questions, comments, anything else from me? Okay. Thank you very much.
One sort of thought. As we get closer to the end of the job, as we take a look at what remains in that grant and the city's local share, if we finish, the city's only paying 2.5% of the runway project, but if we're 150 grand under budget, you may want to talk to the mayor about reappropriating the underrun from the local share towards that construction evaluation, that 18D survey. That might be a good way to do it.
Yeah, okay,
Something to think about.
good. Yeah, we'll see whether everything settles in. We still got a ways to go.
Almost there.
Yeah, almost, except it takes a while to progress. Airport manager's report.
Okay, I'm gonna go real quick. I received a letter from the FAA for a grant risk audit letter, and it's basically just asking now that we've received federal funds, do we have the proper policies and procedures in place? And it's basically just a checklist, that we sign and return, so I will do that. And, since we're a city, we have lots of procedures and policies too, so it's easy to answer their checklist and get that back to them. We'd like to have a breakfast fly-in in July, if anyone is interested in donating time for that. The based aircraft is due to Mass DOT. Does anyone have any changes to the number of based aircraft, or have you heard of any changes to based aircraft? I still have the same list from December that I'm going to use, and I haven't heard of any other changes. Let's see, fuel gallon by year report for Jackie's analysis. I gave that to her, and you guys have seen that. And a copy to Jim. This is by year. She wanted the number of gallons. And so basically just for her analysis to show the FAA that we have some trending upwards.
Double the amount.
That's good, yeah. Yeah. The COVID grant money is just about expended, so our budget for till the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, is about expended, so we're back to our small budget. So we need to be careful with expenses until then. We have the city attorney talking to the town of Templeton. And if we can get something agreed upon related to charging taxes to our tenants, I will let you know how that is progressing. I haven't heard anything from them yet.
What's that pertaining to?
They'd like to charge us the tenants' personal taxes, although they call it real estate taxes. For the tenants, a personal tax, which is basically what you have inside your hangar. And for the owner hangars, they wanted to charge a real estate tax.
They already do.
Yours is,
Right,
Right,
and you
I
pay
think
it.
the city
and
of
you
Gardner
pay it.
doesn't see those taxes.
The city of Gardner doesn't pay taxes, so they are looking for a way to make some tax revenue, so they decided to charge the airport tenants some of this tax. And it doesn't amount to much. And so Ken Block and Jim and myself have been resisting. We didn't want to do it, we didn't want to do it. We don't want the tenants to be charged
the,
extra money.
it's the renters that rent from the
It's really
city
the
owned
renters. The renters
Is
don't
where,
want it.
where they're charging taxes.
Yes, and so, it's not widely done. There are some counties in California that actually do it. I've asked the city attorney, and he said they are within their right to charge taxes if they want to. We still don't agree with it, but they have gotten a lawyer and who is approaching the city and approaching me, and they want us to just, comply. And we're going to have to come to some kind of agreement because they're not going to go away. So the city attorney is actually talking to their attorney to see if some kind of agreement can be reached. And as I say, it doesn't amount to much money, and they're spending more money on attorneys than I think they would get in
So
tax income a year.
this pertains to just the people that are renting city hangars,
Yes,
not a private person that owns their own hangar?
right, because you're
Correct.
paying your own, they send you a
Yeah.
Yes, so it's
That's been
really
always,
like
it's trying to work around them charging and checking out the legal ease, and there has to be an agreement between Templeton and Gardner to charge it as part of the rent.
Yeah, because the
Make it part of the rent.
city of Gardner we don't pay taxes, so they're trying to get it some other way. It doesn't amount to much of anything, so I really
Well,
don't know why they're
this was
persisting.
when I was raising concern, and we dealt with it in the first part of the meeting, but you keep spending money here at the airport, the mayor and other people are gonna start looking for ways to recover some of that money.
Right.
No, not really. I mean, it doesn't.
That's why we're
like I
trying
said, It
to,
doesn't amount to much money.
that's why we built the
So-
6 hangars down there, but that brought up, because there's 4 more hangars basically, that the people are, and this building with Dominic are the only ones that are, they're trying to charge tax on it. It's basically 750 square feet per renter down there on the other hangar is what they're looking at, mostly.
So they're gonna charge tax on the square footage
Personal
or
property.
personal
Square footage.
property?
Personal
No,
property.
No,
and what-
no, it's listed on the tax bill as property tax. Because personal property would be the airplane, and that's illegal. That has been not charged, nobody charges
Right.
taxes on airplanes, but it's the property tax on the square footage of the building is what they want to get paid for, like what you pay.
If their attorney wants to do that, the city of Gardner's attorney should say, well, why is the city of Gardner subsidizing the airport for Templeton to collect the tax revenue?
Right.
Right, that's gonna be an argument down the road.
Yeah,
Because,
And Templeton did not pay for any of these.
right,
so
and,
they should start if they're going
Right.
to start charging tax.
and that's exactly how I feel. But the key part of it, and some people don't understand this, is that the city of Gardner owns the land that this airport's on, as well as the sewage treatment plant and the city sandbank is all property owned by the city of Gardner,
But it's in Templeton.
In town.
but it's all in Templeton. They actually own a good portion of Winchendon too, but that's another story. But the Templeton's looking for money, period, any way they can get it.
Right, and since Gardner is tax exempt, you don't pay taxes, they've decided to charge our tenants some tax. And like I said, it's nominal, but still, it's,
It doesn't matter how nominal it is, you've said that word about 4 times in this thing.
well,
And I
they're
strongly
spending more money
disagree.
on lawyers than they are on the fees that
To
they
your
would
point,
collect in a year.
I agree, but the problem is that it starts small, you let them start small, give them an inch, they're gonna take a yard.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
the question that was always asked was these storage facilities that people have, that you can go and buy a bin, or
Right.
do they pay tax on that storage facility as a renter?
Absolutely not, that's all I was gonna suggest.
If you
that,
rent an
actually.
apartment, do you pay tax on the apartment that you rent? That's,
Now, there are some towns that try to get a personal tax.
that's property, personal property.
tax,
Right.
If you let them in your garage to look. Most
Well, they don't
people
even do it, they can assess it based on what your business is, or what your personal property would be.
Right.
And they just automatically do it, it's a percentage. But, yeah, I don't know anybody in business that ever let anybody in
No,
to look around. But that's the crux of the whole thing.
but the storage buildings over here, instead of solar panels, would actually be much more productive and much more money. And they last forever. Solar panels only have a life, extended life, and then what do you do with them when they're junk?
And it has-
Storage units are a hot commodity, and they're always full.
Right,
If you was gonna actually,
but that's a non-airport use.
yeah, but
But
so
what
is
we
the
will
solar
look-
field gonna be.
Yeah, like and the solar field was presented when they cleared the brush on the hill.
Right,
And that got turned down by the mayor because the mayor found out that the airport wanted to keep the money that was generated, income from that, for the airport.
yeah.
And he said, no way, because he doesn't like the airport.
Is it airport property?
And,
That's a federal requirement. You need to see the revenue that your land produces.
right, and that's, some of the revenue, I don't know whether it goes into the general fund, but it should be coming back to us.
They absolutely should. If
And
the FAA
that's-
got wind of that, they would make the city pay
Right,
Yeah, that's
everything that they
illegal.
would have owed to this.
and that would be a question for the,
Like Fitchburg.
welfare committee
The city of
tomorrow.
Fitchburg had to pay the airport back, it was like $150,000.
Yeah, FAA money cannot go into a general fund.
Yeah.
right, no, that doesn't go into a general fund. The rents have to come back to the airport.
Yep.
And the, that piece of it is just, but it's just,
You know,
yeah, it's kind of a
Yeah, we don't.
head scratcher right now.
We've been resisting.
keep
Uh,
resisting.
we-
Okay,
Jim and Rob and I had a meeting with the mayor and the city attorney. He is discussing it with Templeton's attorney, and we'll see where it goes, and we'll talk about it as soon as we get an update.
do you have anything more, Isabel? Facility update or anything, or?
Let's see. Lost my place. Spring cleanup, I'm working on raking down the high spots after the snow plowing. We have some tin to replace on number 10, Jim was gonna look into that. Dominic mentioned there's a small leak in his hangar by his small door. I'll try to find out where that is on the roof. Al and I took a tool inventory, we need a couple of things. We have a donor who was going to give us a few tools for the airport. Still trying to quantify the higher electric bill. The contractors have finished with the temporary setup though, so we're not sure if it's because of the temporary setup or if we're being charged twice by Templeton. As soon as that's finalized and we get the bill after that, we should know if our bill is
Have
going up.
you,
Right now it's doubled.
have you looked in Dominic's hangar to see what's running in there?
Well, the lights are on here all 24 hours a day.
Yeah, but it's just lights.
They're,
I don't think these are,
we think it's
We're
when they activate that, because that's got a heat pump.
Yeah,
It has to keep the temperature from under 80 and above 50,
Right.
50 degrees.
right, so it's
It's
turned
really
out
good
to
work.
51, so we don't know why the bill doubled.
Well,
We have been using
it
this.
probably is from
more.
out there, I'm just saying, from previous experience, I've been here a long time, not as long as some of you others, but I would look in your renter's hangar and see if there isn't
Okay,
something that's being,
Someone mining Bitcoin, like the entire runway went from
LED to
75, yeah.
LED. I
13
expected
watts
it to
per
go
light.
Right.
down.
It
And
should, yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
You
all
know.
right, I will go right out there and I will
you
check.
know, what's he running? What's he got going?
Well,
Maybe,
he's on
maybe
vacation,
he switched
yes.
everything
I-
to electric heat.
I haven't seen, yeah, I don't know, I don't even key.
Okay, the
I
point,
mean, the fact that he got shut out of here, I just walked back there and see there's not even a door to get back and forth.
I've talked to him many times about that and he's mostly okay with it now.
Yeah, well, he's
So
a
he has a
politician.
back door now and he has some private bathroom.
He has a private bathroom now.
Good.
He's okay with it, but that's a good point, I will check. Yep, I'm done.
Okay. And this has been signed off by the building inspector and all the yeah, that was
Sorry,
signed off. The building inspector signed off on this.
Yes, oh, I forgot to mention you and I looked at the guard system. It's
Oh, yes, I've got that right here.
106 seconds,
For the month of
month
February,
February.
we had call-ins. It logs the call-in per day. And we've had some where we're 100, 103, or sometimes one, sometimes none. But if you take the total number of call-ins, divide it by 3, you basically come up with 6 takeoffs and 6 landings a day, is what happens.
Does that seem right?
It's not far off, I don't think.
It seems reasonable, more
It's-
reasonable.
It's, we had 6,159 seconds of communication on the field, but there was 922 call-ins.
How many times does the runway lights get clicked on compared to that?
Don't know, because it doesn't say what time of day. All it says, all we've got is just basic raw numbers right now. And some of them could be a stuck mic or something like that, but we are picking up, I think we're getting a pretty good reading because the antenna is on top of the computer in there, inside a steel building, so the signal's got to be close by for it to hit it. It's
Yeah.
not picking up, I don't think, any of the other airports.
Yeah, and we'll keep looking at it,
Yeah.
and there might be some other reports on there that we can look at.
This is what we want to try and
Sorry.
find, but that gives me assurance that I think there's more takeoffs and landings here than people realize. And some of them could be at night, in the middle of the night too, I don't know. We did have a problem like that a few years back, but I know that there are days when we've been around here and we've had people doing them one right after another. And the average is about at least 3, maybe 4 times on landings and at least 2 or 3 on takeoff. And so we figured the average was probably 3. I don't know, the FAA's got some kind of standard.
And if you're a
secret.
student pilot, sometimes they go around.
Oh yeah, many times.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that I think the numbers are a lot higher than what people would realize. because I think we're getting used. Plus, we're selling some more fuel, so I think we're doing better that way. But that was very fun. We spent, I don't know, it was a Monday or Tuesday, we went in and took a look at it. We can go back and see if we can clock it every month and see where it's at. That's important. Any other new business? Would you like to adjourn? April 3rd will be the next meeting. Okay?
Thank you.
Motion? And time.
I'll second it.
What time?
6:37.
Very good.
Storage facility idea, right?
That is a good idea.
That's a good idea. Storage facility, part of that.
Update, did you know?
Isabel, how do you keep